Elena's world shattered in a single scream. "Get out!" Her mother's voice echoed through the house, sharp as broken glass, as Elena stood frozen, her heart pounding like a trapped bird. She was 18, barely out of high school, and now homeless for loving someone her mother couldn't accept. The night was cruelly cold in their small Ohio town, the kind of cold that seeped into your bones and made every breath sting. Elena clutched her backpack, stuffed with a few clothes and a crumpled photo of her and Sophie, her girlfriend, laughing at a county fair. She stumbled out the front door, her mother's final words, "You're no daughter of mine," cutting deeper than the winter wind. She didn't know where to go. The streetlights flickered, casting long shadows on the cracked sidewalk. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, Sophie's name lighting up the screen, but Elena's hands trembled too much to answer. She wasn't ready to admit how broken she felt, not even to the one person who made her feel whole. Sophie, 19, was everything Elena wasn't: bold, unapologetic, with a fire in her green eyes that could burn through doubt. They'd met at a local coffee shop where Sophie worked, her quick wit and easy smile drawing Elena in like a moth to a flame. Their first kiss, hidden behind the shop's dumpster during a late shift, had felt like the world clicking into place. But now that world was unraveling. Elena trudged toward the park, the only place she could think to go. The oak tree by the bench, where she and Sophie had carved their initials last summer, stood like a silent sentinel. She sank onto the bench, pulling her denim jacket tighter. The photo in her hand was creased, but Sophie's smile still glowed, a beacon in the dark. Her phone buzzed again. This time she answered, her voice barely a whisper. "Sophie, I don't have anywhere to go." "Stay there," Sophie said, her voice steady but urgent. "I'm coming." Minutes later, headlights cut through the mist. Sophie's beat-up Honda screeched to a stop, and she jumped out, her leather jacket flapping as she ran to Elena. Without a word, she pulled Elena into her arms, holding her like she could shield her from the world. "They kicked me out," Elena choked out, tears soaking Sophie's shoulder. "My own mom. Because of us." Sophie's jaw tightened, but her touch was gentle as she wiped Elena's tears. "You're not alone. You've got me. Always." They sat on the bench, the cold forgotten as Sophie's warmth anchored Elena. "We'll figure this out," Sophie said, her voice fierce with conviction. "But you're not going back to that house. Not to her." Elena's mother, Diane, was a woman bound by rigid beliefs, her faith a fortress that left no room for Elena's truth. Coming out had been Elena's act of courage, a desperate hope that love could bridge the gap. Instead, it had burned the bridge to ash. Sophie's apartment was a tiny studio above the coffee shop, barely big enough for one, but she didn't hesitate. "You're staying with me," she said, leading Elena to the car. The drive was quiet, Elena's hand resting in Sophie's, their fingers intertwined like a promise. The studio smelled of coffee and paint, Sophie's half-finished canvases leaning against the walls. A single mattress lay on the floor, blankets strewn haphazardly. "It's not much," Sophie said almost shyly, "but it's home." Elena managed a small smile. "It's perfect." That night they lay side by side, the world outside fading. Sophie traced circles on Elena's palm, whispering stories of a future where they could be free, maybe a little house by a lake, or a road trip across the country. Elena clung to those dreams, fragile but fierce, as sleep finally claimed her. Morning brought harsh reality. Elena had no job, no money, and a family that had turned its back. Sophie, scraping by on her barista wages, couldn't support them both forever. But Sophie's determination was infectious. "We'll find a way," she said, handing Elena a mug of coffee. "First, we get you on your feet." They spent the day scouring job listings, Elena's nerves fraying with every no-experience rejection. By afternoon, they landed on a diner looking for a part-time waitress. The manager, a gruff woman named Rita, took one look at Elena's earnest face and hired her on the spot. "Start tomorrow," Rita said. "Don't be late." Elena felt a spark of hope, but it was fleeting. Her phone pinged with a text from her mother. "You can come home if you leave that girl." The words were a knife twisting in her gut. She showed Sophie, who read it and tossed the phone aside. "She doesn't get to control you," Sophie said, her voice low but fierce. "You're stronger than that." Elena wanted to believe her, but doubt gnawed at her. Could she really build a life from nothing? Could love be enough when everything else was falling apart? As night fell, they sat on the fire escape, the town's lights glittering below. Sophie leaned close, her breath warm against Elena's cheek. "We're in this together," she said. "No matter what." Elena nodded, her heart steadying. She didn't know what lay ahead, but with Sophie beside her, she felt ready to fight. The diner was a whirlwind of clattering plates and shouted orders, but Elena found her rhythm. Her first shift was grueling spilled coffee, impatient customers, and sore feet, but Rita's nod of approval at the end made it worth it. Sophie waited outside, her grin brighter than the neon sign. "You survived," Sophie teased, pulling Elena into a quick hug. "Proud of you." Elena's cheeks warmed, but the weight of her mother's text lingered. She hadn't responded, couldn't find the words to bridge the chasm between them. Sophie sensed it, her green eyes softening. "Don't let her in your head," she said. "You're doing this for you." Back at the studio, they celebrated with cheap pizza and a playlist of Sophie's favorite indie bands. Elena watched Sophie dance around the tiny room, her energy infectious, and for a moment the world felt light. But when Sophie kissed her, slow and deliberate, Elena's fears crept back. What if this was all they'd ever have, a cramped apartment and a fragile dream? The next week tested Elena's resolve. The diner's late shifts left her exhausted, and her mother's texts grew more insistent. "You're throwing your life away." Each one was a jab, but Elena deleted them, clinging to Sophie's strength. Sophie, meanwhile, was juggling her own battles, extra shifts to cover rent, and a looming art school deadline she hadn't told Elena about. One night, Elena found Sophie hunched over a canvas, her hands streaked with paint. The painting was raw, vibrant, a silhouette of two figures under a starry sky, unmistakably them. "It's us," Sophie said quietly. "How I see us." Elena's throat tightened. "It's beautiful," she whispered, tracing the painted stars. For the first time, she saw herself through Sophie's eyes, brave, worthy enough. But the world outside wasn't so kind. At the diner, Elena overheard customers whispering about that gay girl, after Sophie dropped by during a break. Their words stung, but Elena kept her head high, channeling Sophie's defiance. She wouldn't let them dim her light. Then came the letter. Tucked in the mailbox at Sophie's apartment, it was from Elena's mother, handwritten and heavy with intent. Elena's hand shook as she opened it, Sophie hovering nearby. "Elena, I can't watch you ruin your life. Come home. We'll get you help fix this. You don't have to choose her." The word "fix" burned into Elena's mind. She crumpled the letter, tears spilling. Sophie knelt beside her, her voice steady. "She's wrong. There's nothing to fix. You're perfect as you are." Elena wanted to believe her, but the rejection cut deep. She'd always been the good daughter, the one who followed rules, who made her mother proud. Now she was a stranger in her own family. Sophie pulled her close, their foreheads touching. "You're my family now," she said. "And I'm yours." The words were a lifeline. Elena nodded, wiping her tears. "I don't want to go back," she said, her voice breaking but resolute. "I want this. Us." Sophie's smile was fierce. "Then we keep fighting." They made a plan. Elena would save her tips, and Sophie would apply for art school scholarships. They'd build a life piece by piece, no matter how long it took. But the plan hit a snag when Sophie's boss cut her hours, citing scheduling issues. Elena suspected it was because of their relationship. The whispers had reached the coffee shop too. Desperate, Sophie took a second job at a bookstore, leaving her little time for painting or Elena. Their nights together grew rare, stolen moments between shifts. Elena felt the distance growing, not in their love but in their time. She missed Sophie's laugh, her stories, the way she made everything feel possible. One evening, Elena found Sophie asleep at her easel, paintbrush still in hand. The sight broke her heart. She gently woke her, pulling her into bed. "You're pushing too hard," Elena whispered. Sophie's eyes were tired but stubborn. "I'm doing this for us. For our future." Elena kissed her softly. "Our future doesn't mean anything if you burn out." They held each other, the world quiet except for their breathing. Elena knew they couldn't keep going like this. Something had to give. The next day, Elena took a risk. She approached Rita at the diner, asking for extra shifts. Rita raised an eyebrow but agreed, impressed by Elena's grit. The extra hours meant more money but also less time with Sophie. The balance was fragile, and Elena felt it tipping. As winter deepened, so did the tension. Elena's mother showed up at the diner one night, her face a mask of determination. "We need to talk," she said, her voice cold. Elena's heart raced. She wasn't ready for this confrontation, not here, not now. But her mother wasn't leaving. The diner's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Elena faced her mother, Diane, across the counter. The air was thick with tension, the clatter of dishes fading into the background. Diane's eyes, once warm with pride, now held a steely resolve that made Elena's stomach churn. "I didn't raise you to live like this," Diane said, her voice low but cutting. "You're throwing away everything for her." Elena gripped the counter, her knuckles white. "Her name is Sophie," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "And I love her." Diane flinched as if the words were a slap. "You're confused, Elena. You're young. You don't know what you're doing." The words echoed the letter, each one a dagger. Elena wanted to scream, to make her mother see her, but the diner wasn't the place. Customers were watching, their stares heavy. Rita, wiping down tables nearby, gave Elena a subtle nod, permission to take this outside. In the parking lot, the cold bit at Elena's skin, but her mother's words were colder. "I found a program," Diane said, pulling out a pamphlet. "It'll help you. You can come home, start over." Elena stared at the pamphlet, some kind of conversion therapy, dressed up as salvation. Her hands shook with anger. "You think I need fixing? Mom, I'm not broken." Diane's face hardened. "You're choosing sin over family. I can't accept that." The words landed like a blow, but Elena stood taller. "Then you're the one losing me," she said, her voice breaking. She turned and walked away, leaving Diane in the lot, the pamphlet fluttering to the ground. Back at the studio, Elena collapsed into Sophie's arms, recounting the confrontation. Sophie listened, her jaw tight, her hands gentle. "You stood up to her," Sophie said, pride in her voice. "That's strength, Elena. That's you." But the victory felt hollow. Elena's mother had been her anchor, her guide. Losing her hurt more than she could say. Sophie held her through the night, whispering promises of a future where they'd be enough for each other. The weeks that followed were a grind. Elena's extra shifts at the diner helped, but Sophie's bookstore job was draining her. One night, Elena came home to find Sophie staring at a rejection letter from the art school. Her scholarship application had been denied. "It's fine," Sophie said, forcing a smile. "I'll try again next year." But Elena saw the crack in her armor. Sophie's dreams were slipping, and Elena felt helpless to stop it. She suggested they take a night off, just the two of them. They drove to the lake outside town, the water still under a thin layer of ice. They sat on the hood of Sophie's car, wrapped in a blanket, watching the stars. "I'm scared," Elena admitted, her voice small. "What if we can't make this work?" Sophie took her hand, her touch steady. "We will. We've got each other. That's more than most people have." Elena leaned into her, the warmth of Sophie's body chasing away the cold. They kissed slow and deep, the world falling away. For that moment it was just them, unbreakable. But reality crept back. Sophie's boss at the bookstore was increasingly hostile, making snide comments about her lifestyle. Elena urged her to quit, but Sophie refused. "We need the money," she said. "I can handle it." Elena wasn't so sure. She saw the toll it was taking. Sophie's paintings grew darker, her smiles rarer. Elena decided to act. She spent her day off scouring the town for better jobs, finally landing an interview for Sophie at a local gallery. The pay wasn't great, but it was a step toward her art, her passion. When Elena told her, Sophie's eyes lit up for the first time in weeks. "You did this for me?" she asked, pulling Elena into a fierce hug. "For us," Elena said, smiling. The gallery interview went well, and Sophie was hired as an assistant. It was a small victory, but it felt monumental. They celebrated with takeout and a candlelit dance in the studio, swaying to a slow song on Sophie's ancient radio. But the joy was short-lived. Elena's mother hadn't given up. One morning, a social worker knocked on the studio door, sent by Diane to check on Elena's welfare. The implication was clear. Diane was trying to paint Sophie as a bad influence, a danger. The social worker was kind but thorough. asking pointed questions about their living situation, their finances. Elena answered calmly, but inside she was raging. Her mother was trying to tear them apart even now. After the social worker left, Sophie slammed her fist on the table. She won't stop, will she? Elena shook her head, tears burning her eyes. I don't know how to make her. They sat in silence, the weight of it crushing. But Sophie's hand found Elena's, and they held on, refusing to let go. The social worker's visit left a shadow over the studio. Elena couldn't shake the fear that her mother's reach would keep growing, like a storm cloud blotting out their fragile sun. Sophie, ever defiant, threw herself into her new gallery job, determined to prove Diane wrong. The gallery was a breath of fresh air. Sophie thrived among the paintings and sculptures, her passion reigniting. Elena visited on her days off, watching Sophie talk about art with a spark that had been missing. One afternoon, the gallery owner, a kind older woman named Clara, pulled Elena aside. She's special, Clara said, nodding towards Sophie. And so are you for sticking by her. Elena blushed, but the words warmed her. For the first time, she felt seen by someone outside their bubble. Clara offered Elena a part-time job helping with events, and Elena accepted, thrilled at the chance to work alongside Sophie. The extra income eased the pressure, but Diane's shadow lingered. Elena's phone buzzed with messages from her mother, alternating between pleas and accusations. You're breaking my heart. You're living in sin. Elena stopped reading them, but each one left a bruise. Sophie noticed the change in her. One night, as they lay in bed, she cupped Elena's face. Talk to me, she said. Don't carry this alone. Elena broke, sobbing as she admitted how much her mother's rejection hurt. I keep thinking maybe she's right. Maybe I'm wrong to want this. Sophie's eyes blazed. You're not wrong. Love is never wrong. She's the one who's lost, not you. Her words were a tether, pulling Elena back from the edge. They made love that night, slow and deliberate, every touch a defiance of the world outside. But Diane wasn't done. One evening, she showed up at the gallery during an event, her presence like a storm breaking. Elena was setting up chairs when she saw her mother, dressed in her Sunday best, her face a mask of determination. We need to talk, Diane said, her voice loud enough to turn heads. Elena froze, her heart pounding. Sophie, across the room, saw the exchange and hurried over, placing herself between Elena and Diane. You don't get to do this here, Sophie said, her voice low but fierce. Diane ignored her, focusing on Elena. I found a place for you. A good Christian home. You can start over, be the daughter I raised. The words hit like a slap, but Elena found her voice. I'm not your project, Mom. I'm your daughter and I love Sophie. If you can't accept that, you don't get to be in my life. The gallery went silent, all eyes on them. Diane's face crumpled, but she didn't back down. You'll regret this, she said, turning and leaving. Sophie pulled Elena into a side room, away from the stairs. You okay? She asked, her hands gentle on Elena's shoulders. Elena nodded, tears streaming. I meant it. I'm done trying to please her. Sophie kissed her forehead. I'm so proud of you. The confrontation shook Elena, but it also freed her. She threw herself into her work at the gallery, finding joy in the small moments, arranging flowers for an exhibit, laughing with Sophie over a spilled tray of wine glasses. They were building something real, something theirs. But Diane's final move was coming. A week later, Elena received a letter from a lawyer. Her mother was petitioning for guardianship, claiming Elena was unstable and under Sophie's influence. The letter outlined a hearing in 2 weeks, a chance for Diane to argue her case. Elena's world tilted. She was 18, legally an adult, but the threat felt real. Sophie read the letter, her face pale. She can't do this, she said. We'll fight it. They contacted a local LGBTQ+ advocacy group, who connected them with a pro bono lawyer named Marcus. He was young, passionate, and confident. This is a long shot for her, Marcus said. You're an adult, and there's no evidence of instability. But we need to be ready. The next 2 weeks were a blur of preparation. Elena and Sophie gathered character references: Rita from the diner, Clara from the gallery, even a teacher from high school who'd always supported Elena. They poured their hearts into statements, proving their life together was stable, loving, real. The night before the hearing, they sat on the fire escape, the town quiet below. Elena's hand trembled in Sophie's. "What if we lose?" she whispered. "We won't," Sophie said, her voice fierce. "We're stronger than her hate." Elena leaned into her, drawing strength from her warmth. Tomorrow they'd face the fight of their lives. The courtroom was small, sterile, its fluorescent lights casting harsh shadows. Elena sat beside Sophie, their hands clasped under the table, Marcus on her other side, his briefcase open with neatly organized files. Across the room, Diane sat with her lawyer, her face unreadable but her eyes fixed on Elena. The judge, a stern woman with gray hair, called the hearing to order. Diane's lawyer spoke first, painting Elena as a confused teenager led astray by Sophie's influence. He cited her sudden departure from home, her unstable living situation, and Diane's genuine concern as a mother. Each word twisted the knife in Elena's chest, but she kept her head high, Sophie's thumb tracing circles on her hand. Marcus stood, his voice calm but commanding. "Elena is an 18-year-old adult, making her own choices. She's employed, living in a stable environment, and surrounded by a supportive community. Her mother's petition is based on personal beliefs, not evidence of harm." He presented their references: Rita's glowing letter about Elena's work ethic, Clara's testimony to their partnership, and the teacher's account of Elena's resilience. Elena's own statement, read aloud by Marcus, was raw and honest. "I love my mother, but I love Sophie too. I'm not confused. I'm not unstable. I'm just me." Sophie squeezed her hand, tears in her eyes. The judge listened, her expression neutral, as Diane took the stand. Diane's voice wavered as she spoke of her faith, her fear for Elena's future, her belief that she was saving her daughter. But under Marcus's cross-examination, her arguments faltered. She couldn't provide evidence of instability, only her own disapproval. When Elena took the stand, her heart pounded, but Sophie's steady gaze anchored her. "I'm building a life I'm proud of," she said, "with someone who loves me for who I am. I don't want to lose my mom, but I won't lose myself to keep her." The judge adjourned for deliberation. Elena and Sophie waited in the hallway, their shoulders touching, the silence heavy but hopeful. When they were called back, the judge's ruling was clear. The petition is denied. Elena is an adult, capable of making her own decisions. This court finds no basis for guardianship. Relief flooded Elena, and she turned to Sophie, their embrace fierce and tearful. Diane left without a word, her lawyer trailing behind. Elena felt a pang of loss but also freedom. She'd chosen her truth, and it had held. Outside, the spring air was warm, the world bright with possibility. Sophie took Elena's hand, her grin radiant. "We did it," she said. "We won." But the victory was bittersweet. Elena knew her mother's rejection might never fade. That night, they sat on their fire escape, the stars above brighter than ever. Sophie pulled out her sketchbook, showing Elena a new drawing: a house by a lake, two figures hand in hand. "This is still our dream," she said. Elena smiled, tears falling. "Let's make it real." They did. Over the next year they saved every penny, Elena rising to manager at the diner, Sophie curating exhibits at the gallery. They moved into a small apartment with a view of the lake, their initials still carved in that park bench, a reminder of where they'd started. One evening Elena found a letter in their mailbox, no return address. It was from Diane, just a few lines. "I don't understand, but I'm trying. I love you." Elena cried, not from pain but from a flicker of hope. She showed Sophie, who nodded quietly. "Maybe one day," Sophie said, pulling her close. They stood by the lake, the water reflecting the stars, their hands intertwined. Elena had lost a home, but she built a new one, not just with Sophie, but within herself. She was no longer the girl kicked out for loving too boldly. She was Elena, whole and unbroken, ready for whatever came next. Their love, forged in fire, had carried them through. And as they kissed under the night sky, Elena knew it always would. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe to get notifications about next videos.